The great hall of Veloth Prime was cold and bright. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with a pale blue color. It was beautiful in a way that made you feel small and afraid. Marcus Chun stood alone in the center of the room. He was a tall man with dark hair and tired eyes. His hands were bound behind his back with energy cuffs that hummed softly. Around him, sitting in tall chairs that rose like towers, were the judges. The Velothians, they were not like humans at all. Their bodies were long and thin, almost like snakes that had learned to stand upright. Their skin changed colors slowly, shifting from silver to pale purple as they moved. They had no eyes that Marcus could see, but he knew they were watching him. They always watched. The chief magistrate sat highest of all. Its voice was strange and harsh, like glass breaking very slowly. Marcus Chun of Earth, it said, you have been found guilty of unauthorized settlement on the planet Kethra 7. This world is under dispute between 3 species. No settlement is permitted until the dispute is resolved. You knew this. You came anyway. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. He had known the law. He had broken it anyway because he had nowhere else to go. Earth was crowded and sick. The colony ships were full. He had found an old shuttle and taken his chances. The punishment for this crime, the chief magistrate continued, is death. A murmur went through the watching crowd. Representatives from many species had come to see the trial. Some looked like insects. Some looked like clouds of gas held in special containers. Some looked almost human, but not quite. All of them watched with great interest. Marcus felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. He had expected this. He had known the risks. But then the chief magistrate made a sound that might have been laughter. It was not a nice sound. However, it said, we have decided to show mercy. The word hung in the cold air. Mercy. Marcus did not trust that word. Not from the Velothians. They were known across the galaxy for their cruelty dressed up as justice. You wish to live on Kethra 7 so badly, the chief magistrate said. Very well. You will live there. We will take you to the southern continent. This is a place of extreme weather. Very hot in summer. Very cold in winter. There are dangerous animals. The soil is toxic in many places. The rains are acidic. It paused, letting the words sink in. We will give you nothing. No shelter materials. No tools. No food. No water containers. No clothing beyond what you wear now. No medicine. Nothing that any civilized species uses to survive. You will have only what the planet itself provides. The crowd stirred with excitement. This was better entertainment than a simple execution. This was a show that would last for days, maybe weeks. They would watch the human struggle and fail and die slowly. If you survive, the chief magistrate said, you may keep your settlement, but you will not survive. No one ever has. Marcus finally spoke. His voice was quiet but steady. Others have faced this punishment before me? Yes, the magistrate said. 17 times we have given this mercy. Beings from many species. Strong species. Species with thick skin and natural weapons. Species that can go weeks without water. All of them died. The longest lasted 43 days. I understand, Marcus said. Do you have any final words before we carry out the sentence? Marcus looked around the great hall. He looked at all the alien faces watching him with curiosity and pity and amusement. They saw a soft, weak creature. They saw pink skin that would burn in the sun and freeze in the cold. They saw no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. They saw something that would die quickly. They did not see what was inside his head. No, Marcus said. No final words. The Velothians seemed almost disappointed. They had expected begging perhaps, or anger, or tears. The human gave them nothing. They transported him down to the planet that same day. The shuttle flew low over the southern continent, and Marcus pressed his face to the window, watching everything. He saw forests of strange purple trees. He saw rivers that wound through valleys like silver snakes. He saw mountains in the distance, their peaks white with snow. He saw grasslands that stretched to the horizon. He also saw the danger. He saw the dark shapes moving in the forests. He saw how the rivers flooded in some areas and left behind dead zones. He saw the clouds gathering in ways that promised violent storms, but he also saw something else. He saw a possibility. The shuttle landed in a clearing. The guards pushed him out and removed his energy cuffs. One of them, a young Velothian, almost seemed sorry. "You should find a cave," it said quietly. "Hide from the predators. It will give you a few more days." Marcus nodded but said nothing. The shuttle lifted off and disappeared into the sky. He was alone. For a long moment, Marcus just stood there. He breathed the alien air. It smelled strange but not bad. Like copper and flowers and something else he could not name. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors he had never seen before. 2 moons were rising. He was alone on an alien world with nothing but the clothes on his back. He should have been afraid. He should have been desperate. He should have been running to find shelter before the night predators came. Instead, Marcus sat down on the ground. He picked up a handful of soil and let it run through his fingers. He looked at the plants growing nearby. He watched the insects moving among them. He listened to the sounds of the forest and the calls of distant animals. He was not going to run. He was not going to hide in a cave and wait to die. He was going to do what humans had always done. He was going to watch. He was going to learn. He was going to understand this world before he tried to survive in it. High above, invisible in the darkening sky, the Velothian drones watched and recorded. In their monitoring station, the officers made bets on how long he would last. None of them bet more than 2 weeks. They did not understand what they were watching. They saw a man sitting in the dirt as darkness fell. They thought he had given up. They were wrong. Marcus Chun was not giving up. He was just getting started. And in his mind, 10,000 years of human survival knowledge was waking up, stretching, remembering. Every ancestor who had ever faced the wilderness with nothing. Every tribe that had learned to read the land. Every grandmother who had passed down the old ways. They were all with him now. The night came. The predators called. And Marcus watched the stars and planned. The first night was the hardest. Marcus climbed a tree and wedged himself between 2 thick branches. The bark was rough against his back, but he did not mind. Below him, in the darkness, things moved and growled and searched. He heard something large sniffing at the base of his tree. He stayed very still and very quiet until it went away. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he watched and listened. He learned the sounds of the forest. He learned which calls meant danger and which meant safety. By the time the sun rose, he knew the voices of at least 10 different creatures. The Velothian monitoring officers watched him climb down from the tree at dawn. They made notes. Subject survived first night. Remarkable luck, but it was not luck. It was the beginning of something they did not understand. For the next 7 days, Marcus did almost nothing that made sense to his watchers. He walked slowly through the forest, but he did not seem to be searching for food or water. He sat by the river for hours, just watching. He picked up rocks and plants and studied them, then put them back. He followed animal trails, but never tried to catch anything. What is he doing? The monitoring officer asked on the 5th day. He should be hunting. He should be building shelter. He has done nothing useful. Perhaps he has lost his mind, another officer suggested. The stress has broken him. They were wrong again. Marcus was doing the most useful thing possible. He was learning. On Earth, his grandfather had taught him the old ways. Not the ways of technology and machines, but the older ways. The ways of the first humans. His grandfather had said that the most important survival skill was not strength or speed. It was patience. It was observation. It was understanding the land before trying to take from it. So Marcus watched. He learned which plants the small animals ate and which they avoided. The ones they avoided were probably poisonous. He learned which water sources the animals trusted and which they feared. He learned where the predators hunted, and when they slept, he tasted nothing yet. He was not that foolish. But he watched the insects. He noticed that certain bugs ate certain plants without dying. He noticed that some berries were eaten by many creatures, while others were left alone. He was building a map in his mind. A map of what was safe and what was dangerous. By the end of the first week, he had not eaten anything. The Velothians were surprised he was still alive. Humans were supposed to need food every day. They did not know that a healthy human could survive weeks without eating, as long as they had water. Water was easy. The river was clean. Marcus had watched animals drink from it for days. Nothing died. On the 8th day, he drank. On the 10th day, he ate his first food. It was a small fruit that grew on low bushes. He had watched birds eat it. He had watched insects crawl on it. He had squeezed it and smelled it. It reminded him of something between a grape and a plum. He ate only a tiny piece and waited. Nothing bad happened. Over the next few days, he ate more. He found other foods too. A root vegetable that tasted like bitter potato. Some kind of nut that grew in clusters. He was always careful. Always slow. He never ate much of anything new until he was sure it was safe. The Velothians were confused. Their records showed the previous prisoners had died from eating poisonous plants within the first 2 weeks. The human was somehow avoiding this fate. They checked their equipment. Everything was working correctly. The human really was surviving. By day 20, Marcus had found a good place to camp. It was a small hill overlooking a valley. There was a stream nearby for water. The wind usually blew from the west, so he could smell predators coming. A large rock formation blocked the coldest winds. The soil was dark and rich, different from the pale toxic soil in other areas. He began to make simple tools. Sharp stones for cutting, longer stones for digging, sticks with hardened points for defense. It was slow work, and his hands bled sometimes, but he did not stop. The other prisoners had tried to build shelters immediately. They had rushed. They had made mistakes. They had built in bad locations or used materials that fell apart in the rain. Marcus was different. He was not building yet. He was still learning. He spent 3 days just studying the wind. He watched how it moved through the trees. He noticed that it changed direction at certain times of day. He found the spots where it was calm and the spots where it was strong. This knowledge would help him build something that would not blow down. He spent 2 days studying the water. He walked along the stream, looking at the banks. He saw where the water had risen high during floods. He saw the marks on trees and rocks. He learned how high the water could get. He would build above that line. He spent a day just sitting and watching the sun move across the sky. He learned which direction was warm and which was cold. He learned where shadows fell and when. This would help him choose where to place his shelter for the most warmth. The Velothians grew bored. The human was just sitting around. Nothing interesting was happening. But on day 30, everything changed. Marcus stood on his chosen hillside and drew a line in the dirt with a stick. This was where his home would be. Not a shelter. Not a hiding place. A home. He looked at the tools he had made. He looked at the materials around him. He looked at the land that would become his garden. He looked at the stream that would give him water. He looked at the rocks that would become his walls. He had spent 30 days doing almost nothing visible. But in his mind, he had built his home 100 times. He knew exactly what to do. The Velothians watched as the human began to dig into the hillside. They thought it was strange. Why dig into a hill? Why not build on flat ground like any sensible creature? They did not understand what Marcus understood. They did not know that the earth itself was the best insulation. They did not know that a home built into a hill would be cool in summer and warm in winter. They did not know the old human ways of working with the land instead of against it. Marcus dug and smiled. His ancestors had done this in caves and hillsides for 100,000 years. The Velothians thought they were punishing him with isolation. Instead, they had sent him home. The digging took many weeks. Marcus worked slowly and carefully. He did not rush. Rushing led to mistakes, and mistakes on an alien world could kill you. The hillside was made of hard-packed earth with layers of rock beneath. Marcus used his stone tools to break through the surface. He carried the dirt away in piles. He did not throw it away. Everything had a use. The dirt would become something important later. He dug into the hill about 5 meters. The space was low at first, just enough to crawl into. But day by day, he made it bigger. He shaped the walls and smoothed the floor. He created a gentle slope so that water would drain out if any got inside. The Velothian monitors watched with growing interest. The human was not dying. The human was building something. When the main room was finished, Marcus turned his attention to the entrance. This was important. A bad entrance would let in cold wind and rain. A good entrance would protect against both. He remembered what his grandfather had taught him about old human homes. The entrance should face away from the coldest winds. It should be lower than the main room so cold air would sink down and out. It should have a covering that could be opened and closed. He built the entrance facing south, toward the warmth. He dug it slightly lower than the floor inside. He framed it with thick branches tied together with plant fibers that he had spent weeks collecting and processing. But the walls of his dugout home were still just dirt. They would crumble and fall. They would get wet in the rain. He needed something stronger. Marcus had spent many hours by the river, watching and learning. He had noticed a certain kind of clay along the banks. Small animals dug their burrows there, and their burrows did not collapse. The clay held together well. It kept water out. He began collecting this clay. He carried it back to his home in leaves and animal skins that he had made from small creatures he had trapped. It was hard work. His back ached. His hands were always dirty. But he did not stop. He learned how to mix the clay with water and dried grass. This made it stronger. He learned how to pack it against the walls in thick layers. He learned how to let it dry slowly so it would not crack. The Velothians had never seen anything like this. Their species had forgotten these old ways long ago. They built with machines and synthetic materials. They did not know that clay and grass and water could become something almost as strong as stone. But Marcus also knew that dried clay alone was not enough. He needed something harder. He needed bricks. For this, he needed fire. Making fire on an alien world was dangerous. He did not know which woods burned well and which might release poison gases. So once again, he watched and learned. He saw which dead trees the small fires from lightning strikes burned cleanly. He collected that wood. After many failed attempts, he made fire. The first flame was small and weak, but Marcus felt like he had just won a war. Fire changed everything. Fire meant warmth. Fire meant cooked food. Fire meant light in the darkness. And fire meant bricks. He built a simple kiln from stacked rocks. He shaped clay into blocks and dried them in the sun. Then he placed them in the kiln and burned the fire hot for many hours. Some bricks cracked, some melted, but some came out hard and strong and perfect that it took months. But slowly, his home grew solid walls. He made a floor of packed earth mixed with clay. He created shelves carved into the walls for storage. He built a fire pit with a small channel to carry smoke outside. The roof was his greatest challenge. He could not use the earth for a roof. It would collapse. He needed something else done. He had watched the local birds build their nests. They used the long purple grasses that grew in the meadows. They wove them together in a way that kept out the acidic rain. Marcus studied their technique. He practiced. He failed. He tried again. Eventually, he learned how to weave grass thatch that was nearly waterproof. He built a wooden frame over his dugout home and covered it with layer after layer of thatch. It was not perfect, but it worked. Then he did something that amazed his Velothian watchers. He did not just cover the thatch with more thatch. He covered it with soil. He transplanted living plants onto his roof. At first, they thought he had gone mad. Why put dirt on a roof? But as the weeks passed, the plants took root. Their roots held the soil in place. Their leaves directed rain away from the home. The living roof breathed and grew and became part of the hillside itself. From a distance, you could barely see the home. It looked like part of the hill, part of the world. Inside, the temperature stayed comfortable. When the summer heat came, the earth and the living roof kept the inside cool. When winter brought freezing winds, the mass of the hill held warmth like a blanket. Marcus barely needed fire to stay warm. He added more rooms as time passed. A small area for preparing food, a space for making tools, a covered area outside for working in shade. Each addition was careful and slow. Each addition respected the land. He built a system to catch rainwater, directing it through channels of stone and clay into storage containers he had shaped and fired. He built a small garden nearby, enriching the toxic soil with compost made from plant waste and animal droppings. Year by year, the soil grew darker and richer. The Velothians who had sentenced him to death now watched in complete silence. They had expected suffering. They had expected a quick death or a slow one. They had not expected this. The human had built a home. A real home. Not a survival shelter, but a place of comfort and warmth. He had done it with nothing but dirt and clay and grass and stone. He had done it by watching and learning and respecting the world around him. And he was still building, still improving, still growing. The chief magistrate reviewed the footage with something that might have been unease. This was not how the punishment was supposed to work. The human was supposed to be dead by now. Instead, he was thriving. 3 years passed on Kethra 7. 3 years of seasons changing. 3 years of storms and droughts and freezing winters. 3 years of Marcus Chun not dying. The news spread slowly at first. Just whispers between species at trade stations. Did you hear about the human? The one on Kethra 7? Still alive after all this time. Can you believe it? Then the whispers became conversations. The conversations became news reports. The news reports became something bigger. The Velothians had made the surveillance footage available to show their justice working. They had expected viewers to watch a human suffer and die. Instead, viewers watched something else entirely. They watched a human build. They watched a human learn. They watched a human turn an empty hillside into a living, breathing home. The Teth were the first to ask for more. The Teth were an old species. They had lived in space stations for 3,000 years. Their homeworld was just a memory, poisoned and abandoned long ago. They lived in metal boxes floating in the void. And they had forgotten what it meant to touch real soil or breathe real air. When they saw the footage of Marcus digging into the hillside, Something stirred inside them. Something old and almost forgotten. Their ambassador sent a message to the Velothian Council. We wish to send observers to Kethra 7. We wish to study the humans' methods. The Velothians did not know what to say. This was not supposed to happen, but they could not refuse. The Teth were powerful, and refusing would cause problems. They allowed the visit. The Teth shuttle landed near Marcus's home on a cool autumn morning. 3 Keth stepped out. They were tall beings with many limbs, their bodies covered in soft blue fur. Their large eyes took in everything with wonder. Marcus was in his garden when they arrived. He straightened up and watched them approach. He was not afraid. He had stopped being afraid of aliens long ago. The lead to Keth stopped a respectful distance away. Her name was Shale, and she was a scientist who studied how species interacted with their environments. She had spent her whole life in sterile stations. She had never felt dirt beneath her feet until today. Marcus Chun, she said, her translator turning her words into English. We have come to learn. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Then come in, he said. I was about to make tea. The tea was made from dried leaves he found safe to consume. It was served in cups he had shaped from clay and fired in his kiln. The Teketh sat in his home, on chairs he had built from wood and woven grass, and they looked around with amazement. The walls were solid and smooth. The air was warm from the small fire in the hearth. The living roof above them filtered light through gaps in the vegetation. It felt alive. It felt connected to the world outside. How did you do this? Shale asked. You had nothing. No tools. No materials. No knowledge of this planet. I had knowledge, Marcus said. Different knowledge. Old knowledge. He explained about humanity. He told them about the ice ages, when humans had lived in caves and survived winters that killed entire species. He told them about the deserts, where humans had learned to find water in places that seemed completely dry. He told them about the jungles and the mountains and the frozen north. We were never the strongest species on Earth, he said. We were never the fastest. We did not have claws or fangs or thick skin. But we could learn. We could adapt. We could watch the world and understand it. He picked up a handful of soil from his garden. When your ancestors left their world, they took technology with them. Machines and computers and power systems. But they left behind the old knowledge. The knowledge of how to live with the world instead of just on top of it. Shale's eyes were wet. The Tidhath did not cry, but they had something similar. A moisture that came when emotions were strong. We have been floating in boxes for 3,000 years, she said. We have forgotten what it means to have a home. You can remember, Marcus said. It's not lost. It's just waiting. The Teketh stayed for 2 weeks. They followed Marcus everywhere. They watched him tend his garden. They watched him harvest rainwater. They watched him repair his roof with fresh thatch. They took notes on everything. When they left, they promised to return. And they did. Again and again. Each time, they brought others with them. The Meridani came next. Their world was dying. They had taken too much and given nothing back. Their soil was dead, their waters poisoned, their air thick with pollution. They had thought the only solution was to leave, to find a new world and do the same thing again. Marcus showed them his compost pit. He showed them how he took waste and turned it into food for the soil. He showed them how his garden grew stronger each year, not weaker. He showed them that it was possible to take and give at the same time. More species came. The Holith, the singing ones of Axis Prime, the stone builders of the Inner Rim. They came to learn what the human knew. A small settlement grew around Marcus's home. Beings from different species built their own structures, but they built them the old way. in conversation with the land, respecting the water and the soil and the air. The Volothians watched this happen and did not know what to do. They had created this situation. They had meant to show the galaxy the humans were weak and foolish. Instead, they had created something else entirely. They had created a teacher. Marcus did not ask to be a teacher. He did not want fame or followers. He just wanted to live in peace on the world he had grown to love. But he could not refuse those who came with honest questions. He could not turn away those who wanted to remember what their ancestors had forgotten. So he taught. Day by day, season by season, year by year, and the settlement grew, and the world grew healthier, and the galaxy began to pay attention. 5 years after his sentencing, Marcus Chun returned to the Great Hall of Veloth Prime. But this time, he did not come as a prisoner. The hall looked the same. The crystal walls still glowed with cold blue light. The tall chairs of the magistrates still rose like towers. But something had changed. The air felt different. The silence felt different. The chief magistrate was still there, sitting highest of all. Its skin shifted colors more slowly now, almost nervously. Around the hall, representatives from more than 100 species had come to watch. Many of them had visited Cathara 7. Many of them had learned from the human who stood calmly in the center of the room. Marcus Chun of Earth, the chief magistrate, began. His voice was not as confident as before. You have been summoned to answer for the unauthorized development on Cathara 7. Settlement has grown around your original site. Structures have been built. Land has been altered. This was not part of your sentence. Marcus looked up at the magistrate. He was no longer the desperate man who had stood here 5 years ago. His hair had some gray in it now. His skin was weathered from years of sun and wind. His hands were rough with work, but his eyes were calm and clear. May I present evidence? He asked. The magistrate hesitated. The rules allowed it. You may. Marcus nodded to an assistant, one of the Keth who had first visited him. Shale stepped forward and activated a display. Images appeared in the air above the hall. This is Cathara 7's southern continent when I arrived, Marcus said. The image showed a wild landscape. Beautiful but harsh. This is the same area now. The image changed. The landscape was still wild. The forest still grew. The rivers still flowed. But there were differences. Small ones. Subtle ones. The soil health in the region has improved by 30%, Marcus said. The water table has risen. The toxic areas have shrunk. 3 native species that were declining are now stable. He looked around the hall. Every structure in the settlement was built using local materials. Nothing was imported. Nothing was taken that could not be replaced. The land gave, and we gave back. He paused, letting the words settle. You took everything from me. Every shelter choice. Every tool. Every advantage. You thought you were condemning me to death. You thought the planet would kill me. He smiled slightly. But you forgot something. Planets do not want to kill. They just exist. They follow their own rules, their own patterns. If you understand those patterns, if you work with them instead of against them, the planet becomes your partner, your ally, your home. The chief magistrate shifted uncomfortably. This was not going as expected. The settlement is unauthorized, it said, but its voice lacked conviction. The Keth ambassador rose from her seat. Shale's aunt, a powerful figure in Keth politics. I wish to speak, she said. The magistrate could not refuse. Speak. My people have lived in metal boxes for 3,000 years, she said. We told ourselves this was advanced. This was civilized. This was the proper way for an intelligent species to exist. She gestured at the images of Cathara 7. The human has shown us another way, a way we had forgotten. A way of living that makes the world stronger instead of weaker. My people are now building homes on our old colony worlds. Homes of earth and wood and living things. Homes like our ancestors built before we forgot how. She turned to look at Marcus with respect that was clear to everyone watching. We formally request that Marcus of Orcus Chun be granted permanent settlement rights on Cathara 7. We request that his methods be documented and shared with all species who wish to learn. More ambassadors rose. The Maradani, the Holith, others. One by one they added their voices. They spoke of what they had learned. They spoke of dying worlds that might be saved. They spoke of sterile stations where beings had forgotten what real air smelled like. The vote, when it came, was not close. The Velothians found themselves alone. Their cruel punishment had become a gift. Their public execution had become a revolution. Marcus Chun was granted full rights to Cathara 7. His settlement was recognized as legal. His teachings were ordered to be preserved and shared. When it was over, Marcus walked out of the great hall for the last time. He did not look back. He did not feel triumph or revenge. He just felt tired and ready to go home. The shuttle ride back to Cathara 7 was quiet. He watched the stars pass by the window. So many worlds out there. So many species who had forgotten what it meant to belong to a place. When the shuttle landed, it was evening. The 2 moons were rising over the hills. The settlement glowed with soft light. Cook fires and clay lamps. The smell of food cooking. The sound of voices from many species, talking and laughing together. Marcus walked up the familiar path to his home. His original home. The one he had dug into the hillside with nothing but stone tools and patience. It was bigger now. He had added rooms over the years. A workshop. A teaching space. A quiet room just for sitting and thinking. He paused at the top of the hill and looked back at what had grown from his survival. The Teth had built homes inspired by his, but adapted for their bodies. The Maradani had created something between a building and a garden. Each species had taken what Marcus taught and made it their own. Each home was different, but they all shared one thing in common. They belonged to this world. They were part of it, not separate from it. Marcus thought about his grandfather, long dead now, back on Earth. The old man had taught him to read the land, to respect it, to work with it. He had never imagined that this knowledge would be needed on an alien world. He had just passed it on because that was what you did with old wisdom. You gave it to the next generation. Now that wisdom was spreading across the galaxy. Species that had lost their way were finding it again. Worlds that were dying might live. All because the Pelothians had tried to kill one human by giving him nothing. Marcus smiled and went inside. The fire was warm. The walls were solid. The living roof rustled softly in the night breeze. He made himself tea and sat in the quiet. Tomorrow there would be more students, more questions, more teaching. The work would never really be done, but tonight he was home. Really and truly home. The stars turned overhead. The moon set, and in a small home built into a hillside on an alien world, a human slept peacefully. He had been given nothing. He had built everything. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all.